Every night, just as the city begins to settle under the dim glow of streetlights and distant car horns fade into the silence, a small, scruffy puppy slowly makes his way to the entrance of City Hope Hospital. The hospital is always alive with emergencies, stretchers rolling through the doors, nurses rushing past, and machines beeping inside. But outside, this one tiny soul brings with him a quiet kind of heartbreak. His name is Bruno. Bruno is not like the other stray dogs you might see running through alleys or digging near garbage bins. He doesn't chase cars or bark for food. He doesn't wag his tail at strangers or follow people around. He just sits, day after day, night after night, on the same worn patch of pavement near the automatic sliding doors. His fur is rough and tangled, his body thin from long days without food, but his eyes, those eyes, never lose focus. They stay fixed on the entrance of the hospital, as if he's waiting for it to open just one more time for the person who once meant everything to him. The nurses and guards have come to recognize him. At first, they thought he was just another stray. Some of them tried to offer him food or coax him into shelter during rainy nights, but Bruno never moved unless it was to get a better view of the door. He never barked or begged. He wasn't looking for food, or even comfort. He was waiting for someone. Someone he hadn't seen in a long time. Someone whose scent still lingered faintly on the steps of the hospital. Dr. Ariv. It was a rainy evening about 5 months ago when Bruno first appeared, barely more than skin and bones, soaked and shaking, curled up behind the hospital near a pile of discarded boxes. Most people passed him by without noticing. But Dr. Ariv, a young, compassionate physician just finishing his late shift, spotted the puppy huddled in the shadows. Without hesitation, Ariv pulled off his white coat and wrapped it around the trembling pup. He carried him inside the hospital break room, dried him off with paper towels, and gave him half his lunch, a few leftover chapatis and a boiled egg. That was the beginning of something quietly extraordinary. Dr. Ariv didn't take Bruno home. He couldn't, with his tiny apartment and strict rental rules, but he made sure Bruno had a place outside where he felt safe. Every morning, Bruno would watch Ariv arrive at the hospital, tail wagging excitedly. Every evening, the two would share a few moments together, Ariv feeding him, petting him gently, whispering things only Bruno understood. And without fail, Bruno would walk with him to the corner bus stop, then trot back to his usual spot to sleep. It was a routine built on trust and love, small moments, but deeply meaningful. Soon, Bruno became known among the staff as Ariv's little assistant. Some joked about giving him a name tag. Ariv laughed too, but deep down, he had grown attached. He told his colleagues that no matter how tough a shift was, seeing Bruno at the end made everything feel okay again. "He doesn't ask questions," he'd say. "He just knows when I need someone." To Bruno, Ariv was everything. The warm hands that fed him, the gentle voice that soothed him, the kind eyes that saw him when no one else did. In a world that had abandoned him, Ariv had offered hope. And in return, Bruno had given him the purest form of love a creature can give, loyalty without condition. But life, as it often does, had other plans, ones that Bruno couldn't understand. And as each night passes and Bruno sits patiently at the hospital doors, his heart still believes that one day, the man who gave him a reason to live will walk out of those doors again and call his name. It had been a grueling day. The hospital had seen more patients than usual, accidents, a fire incident, and a cardiac emergency. Dr. Ariv hadn't had a proper meal, hadn't rested for more than a few minutes. But even in the chaos, he'd managed to slip away during his short break and sit beside Bruno at the back entrance, sharing a few crackers and gently rubbing the dog's ears. Bruno, tail wagging and tongue lolling, didn't know how tired Ariv really was. All he knew was that his friend had come, like he always did. By the time the clock struck 10, Ariv finally clocked out. He packed his stethoscope into his worn-out bag, slung on his coat, and walked out the side door. As always, Bruno jumped up and followed, walking right beside him like a little soldier. The two made their way down the dim hospital steps, their shadows stretching long across the road. It was just another night, until it wasn't. They reached the crosswalk just across from the hospital. Ariv glanced both ways, saw the signal blinking red for cars, and began to cross. Bruno, as always, followed close behind. But just as they stepped onto the middle of the road, a loud roar pierced the air. A black SUV, headlights blazing and engine growling, ignored the light completely and tore through the intersection at full speed. The impact was immediate and brutal. Arif didn't have time to react. The sound of metal and flesh, screeching tires, and horrified screams echoed across the street. Bruno barked, a sharp, panicked sound, as his best friend's body hit the pavement. Time seemed to stop. For a moment, all was still. And then, chaos erupted. People ran out of the hospital, doctors, nurses, guards, all of them recognizing the crumpled figure on the ground. "It's Dr. Arif!" someone shouted. Blood stained his white coat. His stethoscope was snapped in half. Bruno, whimpering, circled his body, licking his hand, confused and afraid. He didn't understand why Arif wouldn't open his eyes. He didn't understand the urgency, the fear, the rushing stretchers and shouting voices. All he knew was that his human was hurt. They carried Arif inside, into the very hospital where he had saved countless lives. Only this time, he was the one on the table. And outside, behind the glass doors, Bruno sat, waiting, watching. Inside the ER, the hospital staff worked like a machine. No one dared give up. Arif wasn't just a colleague, he was family. A light in their hallways. The kind of doctor who treated patients like people, not cases. The kind of man who remembered birthdays and brought coffee for tired nurses. They fought hard. They tried everything. CPR, oxygen, blood transfusions. They refused to say it. Refused to believe it. But life, cruel as it can be, had made its decision before they ever started. Just before dawn, the monitors fell silent. The head nurse removed her gloves, slowly, painfully, and whispered what everyone feared, "He's gone." The staff stood in stunned silence. Some cried. Others clenched their fists. It didn't seem fair. Not for someone who gave so much, who had so much more to give. Outside, Bruno hadn't moved. All night, he had sat facing the hospital doors. When the ambulance had arrived, he had barked. When the doors had closed behind Arif, he had waited. And now, even as the sun began to rise, casting a soft golden hue over the pavement, Bruno stayed right there, tail still, ears perked, eyes searching. He didn't understand death. All he knew was that his best friend had walked through those doors, and hadn't come back. As morning traffic began to stir, as nurses in fresh uniforms began their shifts, they saw him, Bruno, unmoving, still staring. And in that moment, more than one pair of eyes welled up with tears. Because Bruno wasn't just waiting. He was holding on to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Dr. Arif would return, and call his name once more. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline and the hospital lights flickered to life one by one, Bruno would slowly emerge from the shadows, his paws muddy, his fur matted from wandering through alleys and sleeping under benches. But like clockwork, he always arrived just before sunset, taking his place outside the hospital doors, as if he was reporting for duty. His eyes, once bright and playful, had grown tired. His tail no longer wagged. His body grew thinner with each passing week. But his resolve, his faith, remained unshaken. Rain didn't stop him. Neither did the biting winter cold or the scorching summer heat. Bruno simply sat, head tilted toward the hospital doors, listening for footsteps he knew by heart, watching for the face that had once knelt beside him with a gentle smile and a warm chapati. The hospital staff grew used to the sight. They began calling him the doctor's dog. Nurses would sometimes leave scraps of food near him. Security guards would open the lobby doors just enough during storms so he could take cover inside. But Bruno never accepted more than what he needed. He never chased affection. Never looked for a new home. Because to him, his home had already gone inside, and hadn't yet come back out. The hospital administration discussed what to do. Some said they should find him a shelter, maybe get him adopted. But every time someone tried to take Bruno away, he'd find his way back, sometimes the same night, sometimes after days. No matter how far he was taken, he always returned to the same spot.
As if pulled by an invisible thread.
A promise he never broke. Weeks turned into months. And one rainy night, much like the one when Arif first found Bruno, a senior doctor named Dr. Mera stepped out after a long shift. As he reached the front gate, he noticed the small figure curled up beneath the reception awning. Bruno, soaked through, was shivering, but still watching. Always watching. Dr. Mera paused. He'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. But now, standing in the rain, looking at those eyes filled with quiet grief, something inside him cracked. He slowly knelt beside the little dog and gently placed a trembling hand on his head. Bruno didn't flinch. He simply leaned into the touch, eyes still fixed on the door. The doctor whispered, more to himself than to Bruno, "He still believes he'll come back." And at that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a shared understanding of pain, of loss, of the fragile hope we cling to when logic fades. People from the hospital gathered at the windows, watching. Some wiped their tears. Others took quiet photos, not to share on social media, but to remember. Because Bruno wasn't just a dog anymore. He had become a symbol, a small, silent reminder of the kind of love the world often forgets. A love that doesn't need words. A love that doesn't fade. He was mourning, yes. But more than that, Bruno was teaching. Teaching the world what it means to wait for someone, not for days or weeks, but for as long as it takes. Teaching us that real love isn't loud or flashy. It's patient. It's constant. It shows up every day and sits in the rain if it has to. Bruno's story began with a rescue. It continued with friendship. And it endured, through heartbreak, through death, with unshakable loyalty. And every evening, as the city lights glow and patients pass through the sliding doors of City Hope Hospital, they'll see a small, weathered dog sitting quietly by the entrance.
Still waiting. Still believing.
Because in Bruno's heart, Dr. Ariv never really left.